Nomination day for the Malaysian state of Johor will take place tomorrow. Candidates have a 1-hour window from 9 to 10 a.m. local time to file their nomination papers. The two major coalitions, Pakatan Harapan and Barisan Nasional, are expected to contest all 56 seats in the assembly. Another grouping, that's Pakatan Nasional and the youth-based party Muda, as well as the Socialist Party of Malaysia and Bersama, all in the race as well. Polling will take place on the 11th of July, with early voting set for the 7th of July. And CNA's senior correspondent Afifah Ariffin is live on the ground in Johor Bahru. Afifah, even for a dominant party, strategy still matters. When we look at who will be fielded for which states, what should we be looking out for?
Well, tomorrow is when the race starts. The nomination day is really about seeing how the political battlefield will finally take shape. So, although all of the major coalitions and political parties over the last couple of days have already announced most of the candidates, but nomination day is officially when we'll know who's contesting where, whether there's any last-minute withdrawals or surprises, and ultimately how many candidates will be contesting in each seat, meaning how many multi-cornet fights will we be seeing in the 56 constituencies that's up for grabs. So we'll also get a first indication of where the fiercest contest could emerge. So if we look at the results from the last state polls back in 2022, nearly half of the 56 seats were marginal seats, meaning seats with very small winning majority. And this time round, it could swing either way. And so parties, as we know, since the dissolution of 1st June, they have been spending weeks preparing, launching their election machinery, launching their grassroots. But once nominations close, they'll know exactly who they'll be up against, and then they can begin deploying their resources to the constituencies they believe are the most competitive. Another thing to watch is, of course, the atmosphere on the ground. So nomination day often provides the first real display of each coalition's campaign machinery, from the turnout of the supporters who come along with the potential candidates, the presence of senior leaders accompanying the candidates to the nomination centre. And while it's not necessarily an indication of electoral strength, it does offer this sort of early glimpse of how parties intend to run their campaigns over the next 2 weeks. But of course, beyond the candidates and the seat matchups tomorrow will also mark the start of the campaign itself. So from that point, the parties will just have 2 weeks to persuade more than 2.7 million eligible voters here in Johor. And what we know is that campaign is expected to focus very heavily on Johor's economic story. So the incumbent Barisan Nasional government, we know they'll be banking on their track record in power over the last 4 years, while the opposition, Pakatan Harapan, they will be banking on its position in power at the federal level. So tomorrow really is the starting line, and it sets the stage for what's expected to be a very closely watched 2-week campaign.
And what's different from the last state polls you mentioned in 2022 will be a change, a shake-up in the major coalitions in Malaysia.
That's right. Well, firstly, Barisan Nasional, Pakatan Harapan are now partners in the federal Madani government. That wasn't the case back in 2022. But this time in Johor, they are the two main rivals. So this election will be very interesting. It will be an interesting test of how voters will respond to that distinction, and whether campaigning at the state level will have any sort of impact on that dynamic or the working relationship between those two coalitions in Putrajaya. Secondly, the political landscape this time round has become a lot more crowded, a lot more fragmented. There are new political parties emerging since the last state election, parties like former Economy Minister Rafizi Ramli's Bersama, for example. Meanwhile, the other opposition coalitions like Pakatan Nasional, they've also undergone some internal changes. So that raises the likelihood of possibly more multi-cornet fights in some constituencies, and really make the electoral dynamics a lot more unpredictable. So let's take a closer look at what's at stake in this election and how the political dynamics shaping the contest. The battle lines in Johor have been drawn. Major political parties have revealed their candidates for the state polls, launched their election machinery, and laid out the messages they hope will resonate with voters. Now the attention will turn to the campaign itself. The incumbent Barisan Nasional government enters the election as a dominant force. Having secured a 2/3 majority in the last state polls in 2022, BN is expected to capitalize on its track record over the past 4 years in power. Leaders are likely to point to Johor's investment momentum, major infrastructure projects such as the RTS Link and Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, and plans to sustain the state's economic growth. But analysts say voters are expected to weigh those achievements against everyday concerns. Issues such as cost of living, higher paying jobs, and whether development is translating into tangible benefits are likely to dominate the campaign.
I think a lot of this election will be fought on local issues, even on issues, universal national issues like cost of living will be dealt with locally. The narrative will be localized. So it's all about which team is seen to be able to deliver a better outcome for the people.
The race is also unfolding in a more crowded and fragmented political arena than 4 years ago. Despite governing together at the federal level, Barisan Nasional and Pakatan Harapan remain rivals in Johor. Pakatan Nasional, meanwhile, enters the contest following months of internal upheaval. Several newcomers are also expected to make their electoral debut in more than a dozen constituencies. The Johor state election is widely seen as the first major electoral test since a series of political realignments in the country.
I believe it serves as a bellwether for the looming 16th general elections. This is a big battleground to test alliances, current alliances and future alliances at the national level. So how it plays out in Johor will have significant implications on the stability of federal government moving forward.
More than 2.7 million voters are eligible to cast their ballots across all 56 state constituencies. Nomination on Saturday will formally kick off the campaign before Johorians head to the polls on 11 July.
I think that CNA's senior correspondent Afifah Ariffin reporting live there from Johor Bahru.